Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. William White, the official geologist of the North American Dogman Project, I see once again you have found your way into the darkness of the Fox Den to awaken me from my slumber for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. Absolutely delicious. You must love the liquid as it replenishes your power source. And now that Mr. White has released the shackles from Star Fox, it is time to once again take a walk into the darkness with the Midnight Society.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. This is the home and the stomping ground of the Midnight Society. Once again, we sit by the late night fire and burn the timber in an attempt to figure out what is occurring across the United States. It is the spooky season, but remember, it isn't a season, it really is a lifestyle. We have William White again. Yes, it's time to nerd out with our science team. It is imperative to pick the mind of people that actually have education to share with us. How you been, man?
I've been pretty good. How are you doing?
Just been editing and getting a little bit more happy with the Bruins stepping it up a little bit and just grinding
Yeah.
away, man. What about you?
Oh, I actually have made a decision, a conscious effort to start to read books again. I feel like I've gotten away from that. Everything's on the phone and the computer and, real short attention span. So I've been making myself sit down and read kind of a thick intellectual sort of book today. And hopefully I carry on with that and don't fall off the wagon again. So,
That's awesome stuff. It's pretty funny that, to be quite honest with you, I read a ton, but like you were saying, not necessarily books. I mean, I read things, but I love to learn. Yet I find myself being a very visual person, so I like to see visuals a ton when I'm learning as well. I don't know, I'm a hands-on learner and a visual learner, if that makes sense.
sure, sure.
Yeah, so, but tonight, man, you being down in the area near Ohio and Pennsylvania, there's this
Mhm.
place called Helltown that has some pretty effed up stuff going on down there, especially with some of the historical aspects and in general. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that place, man.
Yeah, I don't know what's more scary, the rumored supernatural and cult type stuff going on there, or the overreach of in people's lives, but both are at play in Helltown. So
Yeah, some pretty crazy stuff, man. And that's what's baffling about it is I know enough about it, but I'm assuming because you are the knowledge bringer and I'm the knowledge seeker, so you will have more to add than what I already know. But I mean, there's
sure.
so many weird cryptid sightings down there. I
Hmm.
mean, Dogman, Sasquatch, a bunch of different things. And one of the
Giant snakes.
yes, dude, right? The more sinister or nefarious things I've heard about is there's a school bus down there, okay? This is as
Hmm.
far as the verification can go. There's pictures and video of the school bus. We know it's there. When you look back to try to figure out how it got there, there's no sort of news articles or local news outlets that seem to pick up anything about a bus crash. But according to locals down there, there's a few different variations, but one of them falls into the line of this bus and these children being run off the road by a werewolf or dogman. And again, there's also other kind of lores that go with this, school bus, but they all kind of similarly fall in the same pan of them being unalived and disappearing. But as stated, there's really nothing to be able to verify that more than the bus itself out in the middle of
Hmm.
nowhere.
Yeah, well, so to kind of give some background on what Helltown is, um, it was actually known as Boston Township up until about 1974. And in 1974, under Gerald Ford, the National Park Service, I think it was NPS, they started to let's organize, let's say, and create a lot more national parks across the country, because there was that was kind of what during the time where people started to become concerned with pollution and loss of the natural environment, and people realized, hey, this isn't just endless. If we don't take care of what's in our backyard, we're going to lose it. So in 1974, agent from the was sent to begin to organize the Cuyahoga Valley National Park uh, just outside of Cleveland, and it happened to overlap with Boston Township. And unfortunately for the residents of Boston Township, through the use of eminent domain, which is basically where the says, hey, this thing we need to build or do is much more important than your private property, you have to sell to us. They'll do that for highways, they'll do that for dams, for reservoirs, and for national parks. So they forced everyone who lived in Boston Township to sell their homes. And it was rumored that they also weren't too generous. They kind of paid them bottom of the barrel prices too, which really sucks if that's true. So that's kind of the origin of it. So Helltown is actually an abandoned town in the middle of a national park, and because of that, the roads to it are blocked off for the most part and not maintained. There's a lot of old decrepit buildings, including an old church that has some lore and stories around it. And so that's kind of where we're starting from here. As far as that school bus goes, so the official story, and just for background, I lived up in the Cleveland area. I hiked the Cuyahoga Valley National Park a few times. I took my family to Peninsula, which is near that area, near Helltown. And so I'm familiar with the area. But I have not actually explored the ruins of Helltown myself. So anyway, as far as that school bus goes, the official, story that people who claim to have been around back then say is that it was actually used as kind of like a budget camper trailer by a family who was building a house just before the Park Service took all the land. And so then it just got abandoned and left there. But then, yeah, there are all sorts of folklore, urban legends talking about it. It was actually full of, school kids, and it crashed, and, they're buried somewhere in that town. And there's various reasons for the crash. Cult members caused the crash, or a werewolf or Bigfoot type creature caused the crash. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of legends and rumors. And because of how approached it all, no one is, even to this day, no one is too they're not taking side of it. They're not too friendly, and just gonna believe everything they say. I mean, it's unquestionable. It's documented. The U.S. actually did send in soldiers armed with rifles, loaded with ammunition, because sometimes you'll see soldiers, National Guardsmen and stuff, helping out in emergencies, and usually they actually don't have bullets in their magazines and their guns. They're just for show. But they sent in armed soldiers to force the relocation of these people from the land claimed by the park, which is kind of strong. I mean, that's like the type of thing the U.S. did with the Native American tribes when we pushed them out of their lands. I mean, but this happened in 1974. So there is a lot of distrust over the actual reasons for why this was happening and why the town had to be abandoned. So just got to give some background on it.
Boom, right there. See, and I think I like your first version of what happened with that bus. That sounds more likely. Most,
Yeah.
if it was a
Yeah, I mean, it's
camper.
Occam's razor, the simplest to answer, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that literally makes the most sense because I
Yeah.
hadn't heard that. I just heard some of the other more gnarly ones, like you were
Of
saying.
course, yeah.
And I wanted to also ask, is that church potentially still in use?
I mean, it's rumored that people have explored say especially at night, they've seen lights coming from its basement or from, its steeple or windows. Depends on what story you're listening to. The thing that freaks people out about the church, now it's an older church. I mean, Boston Township was founded in like 1804. So it's an older town in the United States. So that church was founded before the Satanic Panic, before anyone cared about like pentagrams and upside down crosses and stuff. In fact, during the era when that church was built, those were like kind of holy protective sigils. The upside down cross is actually known as St. Peter's cross because Peter, the apostle, was crucified, just like Jesus was supposed to have been crucified. But Peter felt like it would be disrespectful to the same manner as his Lord. And so he requested that the Roman soldiers flip the cross upside down so he could, be crucified upside down and not mimic Jesus. So that's why upside down crosses originally were just considered, St. Peter's cross and not a sign of Satanism or evil or anything like that. But this church, it's an old Presbyterian church. It does have St. Peter's crosses on it, and that bothers modern people who have grown up viewing upside down crosses as being a symbol of Satanism and the occult and stuff like that.
Jeez, creepy right there. And recently I
Yeah.
was introduced to a survey where Satanism is actually on the rise. It's one of the fastest rising. Again, I'm spiritual and I don't really understand and dive into religion,
Sure.
but it ties into what we're going to say. It's the fastest growing quote unquote religion, I guess. And one in every 10 people is considered a Satanist this day and age. And no, it's just really intriguing. That's just why I asked. I didn't know if that area was still inhabited by people or because I mean, if it's a national park too, it's just odd. You would think that they would want to gain some sort of revenue from that as well, not just, I guess, closing it completely off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you think about national parks are interesting because usually they take up large areas of land, and Cuyahoga Valley National Park does take up a pretty large area of land just outside of a very big city, Cleveland, Ohio. And but when you think about it, what do we, the normal citizens, generally see of the national parks? We see, the roadway that goes through it that you drive, through the park on, and some designated camping areas you pull off onto, and then usually some, maintained trails that are set up to hike on, right? Um, we don't go through probably 98% of a national park when we visit a national park. So it kind of makes you wonder, is each national park hiding something? Is each national park put in set up in the location it's set up to essentially keep certain areas more or less pristine, isolated from human contact? I mean, you'd have to be some hardcore backpacker who would like to, bushwhack through uncut areas of the woods, forests, mountains, whatever, to visit a lot of the, these places in the park that don't have maintained trails that connect them to the roads. And I think there may be something to that actually, and a lot of people do too. I mean, not to get off on a kind of unrelated tangent, but when you look into Yellowstone, the first national park, it's crazy. It is nuts how many rules and laws about what you can and can't do in that park. And they used to have carve outs for the Native Americans who lived nearby that they could go hunt and go to certain areas that, the rest of us couldn't. And then that got rescinded. And so, I mean, it really makes you wonder, if a lot of these parks aren't hiding, who knows what, portals to the underworld or whatever, you know. Um, but that brings us back to Helltown, because Helltown has, you know, people have claimed to have seen cryptids, have claimed to have seen. Well, shoot, the NADP has had one of our most gruesome, incredible dogman encounters in Ohio, where the man who bred German Shepherds, he was not far from the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and his German Shepherds were all slaughtered and gutted. I mean, we have pictures on our website of at least one of the dogs. I mean, something very real happened. Um, so anyway, you know, people have seen things in and around Helltown. They've talked. People have claimed to have seen mutants, which is connected. The National Park Service, their rangers, apparently around 1980, they were near Boston Township or Helltown, and they several of them broke out in like hives and rashes and basically had really nasty allergic reactions. And what happened, what they found out was that there was a area called the it's like a Czechoslovakian last name, Dijik or something like that, dump, and that dump had not been utilized correctly, and they, you know, someone had been dumping extremely toxic waste there. This is like no joke. This is not a rumor. Not a legend. This is actually for real, because that area became a Superfund site. You know, one of these areas where Congress kind of has an open checkbook, and however much it takes to clean that land of whatever is contaminating it, will pay it. And it, you know, usually takes decades. And actually, it was just a few years ago, I guess, that they finished cleaning up that dump site near Helltown.
Jeez,
So
Flint, Michigan
you
needs that help, huh?
exactly, you combine that with, you know, all these legends and sightings and rumors and people. I I honestly don't think that, you know, toxic waste turns people into mutants, but people are, you know, connecting it and saying, hey, you know, maybe some of the people who didn't want to move out ended up, you know, becoming mutant freaks because they were near this toxic waste dump that no one knew about. Um, so, but apparently, ever since the founding of the town in the early 1800s, there, especially in the early days when the land was far less settled and more of a frontier land, there were and have been several Wendigo sightings there. The settlers that talked about it, you know, because it's the Great Lakes region. I mean, Lake Erie is just, I don't know, 10 miles north of there or something like that, maybe 20 miles north of there. It's the Great Lakes region. That's where the Ojibwa, that's where the Anishinaabe, I think is the other tribe. That's where a lot of these, you know, northern Northwoods tribes that from which the Wendigo legend are, that's where they're from. And Ohio was never really claimed by any one tribe for the most part. It was kind of almost a shared hunting ground by several different tribes, which is interesting in and of itself, and it makes you wonder why why no tribe claimed it. But nonetheless, the Wendigo legend definitely touched it, and so that's an interesting part of its history. And then in modern times, there are rumors that there are cultists who, you know, either live in or at least use Helltown's kind of isolation to, you know, do their rituals, where they actually will, you know, perform sacrifices for the Wendigo that is rumored to still live in the area. So that's kind of cool and creepy if it's true. So,
Yikes. That is definitely some pretty gnarly stuff right there for sure, man. And that made me really think into two things right here. May Koo, who's part of our science team, she was really deep in the LBL area, and you're
yeah,
gonna probably know what these are more or less. And they were like these bonker kind of things that I'm not saying they held any sort of animal. They probably held something of relevance to the park, but it's just this
sure.
real odd cement chamber that, you know, would have these huge heavy doors that open out and that are all locked up and some were open.
Huh.
And she went inside and it's just very large, but just nothing in there. It's as if, like I said, they were storing something in there. Sure, something could be held in there, but like she said, there's no signs of scratches or anything or anything trying to get out more or less. But yeah, it's just odd. And
Yeah, that is odd. Well, the thing that the LBL has in common with Boston Township, Helltown, is the LBL was also an area that had, several different little towns and villages in it, and then was claimed and turned into a national recreation area through eminent domain. And a lot of people had to uproot, communities that had been there for a couple hundred years or longer, because Kentucky's been populated by Europeans since like the early 1700s. Some real hardy frontiersmen types settled it, like Daniel Boone and stuff. And so that's another area where the came in and said, yeah, this isn't really your land, we're taking it, go start over somewhere else. And it also has a lot of dark rumors and legends and sightings and occurrences connected to it.
Yep, that is straight up again nightmare fuel, and that makes me think of I'm a creature feature person, man. I don't like horror movies, dude. I don't really get too much into gore and stuff. I just think werewolves and witches and vampires are cool in movies. But either way, one of my exes, man, she was more up into that. So obviously, I didn't see the original. I saw the remake, The Hills Have Eyes, and I believe I saw the
Oh yeah.
second one too. And I started doing a little bit of research, and obviously there is very, very small amount, if any, that they used of facts. But there is an area where apparently we were testing
Mm.
nuclear weapons, and we built and set up these little towns out in the middle of
Yep.
nowhere. But there was always rumored to be, like you were saying, just people that obviously lived on the land already, or that
Yeah, just
were,
never left, told the screw you, we're doing what
yeah,
we and
still
type of thing.
stayed
Yeah.
there. And basically that's where that movie had come from some of the
Yeah.
lore and stuff. And it's just creepy to think of it because, again, same thing with like Wrong Turn. Nothing about that movie's true, minus the fact of that, yeah, people in that area have gone missing to supposedly feral people, inbred people. And again, when I first saw that through her, because she was twisting like that, I got online, I was looking around, and I'd never heard about any of that stuff occurring down in Tennessee. And I was like, yo, what, the Christmas trees, man? Like, this is actually some sort of facts tied into these people going missing. So it is
Well,
bizarre for
that's
sure.
that's a whole nother topic that maybe one day we can look into, feral humans. And I mean, it's not like a woo woo cryptid type of thing. There are legit people living in the Smoky Mountains and probably in Maine and all over in the remote wilderness of the United States and North America, who just, for whatever reason, broke contact with society. And some of them are more civilized than others. Some of them might be
Hmm.
multi-generational feral humans who've, they're a big enough population that, they found a man and a woman, got together and had kids, and the, kids hopefully found someone they're not too related to have kids. And essentially it's just, there are these populations of people who just, um, are varying degrees of wild. And a lot of people think that they might be behind some of the disappearances in the wilderness too. So
Creepy, creepy stuff. And yeah, we should definitely dive into that at some point. And before I ask you fully your thoughts on what Helltown is, that reminds me of the main hermit, actually. I don't know if you ever heard about that. He was basically a legend up here, more or less,
mm,
because in the Kennebunk area, where it's a really rich part of Maine, okay, if you have a cabin in Kennebunk, you got some loot, okay? And
mm,
in this area, I mean, some people would stay there all year, but the majority wouldn't. It's like your summer chill place, and this guy would just go all around and break into the cabins, just take like toilet paper,
yeah, sure.
toothpaste, food, and all that. And it was like 20 years or so this had been going on, and it was more or less kind of like a creepy pasta. And no, yeah, no one really believed that it was. I mean, obviously these things were occurring, but no one could figure it out. And then sure enough, a bunch of, I believe it was younger kids, were out looking for him in the forest because so many people had done this before, and they actually ended up stumbling across him and then reporting him into like the law enforcement, and they caught him. And
Sure.
now, I mean, he still is up here in Maine, but I believe he lives a more civilized life now. But it just ties into that. Yeah, this guy literally in the Maine would just go, he was sleeping outside, he wasn't staying in these places and such. So straight up boggling mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that stuff definitely happens, and It's not urban legends, a lot of the time. So yeah, that is a fascinating thing to, that who knows, maybe there's a remnant population there in Cuyahoga Valley National Park,
Right?
of some stubborn people who didn't want to leave, or in the LBL, and that might be part of all this stuff. I don't know.
Pretty much mind-boggling because you don't really know. This gentleman happened to not be aggressive and such, and even when they caught
Hmm.
him, he was very cordial, and he actually didn't even know what the internet was because he had been out in the wild for so long and had his same glasses on that he had from like high school and stuff. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, this dude happened to just want to be away from people, but other
Right.
people are out there for way worse purposes. Like this dude
Sure.
he wasn't gonna hurt anybody. I mean, I'm not saying breaking
Yeah,
into
there might be
people's
people out
houses.
there on the run from the law, escaped
Yes.
prisoners, whatever. Yeah, for sure.
That's a big difference. This dude was just, taking shampoo and trash bags and toothpaste and stuff. So, I mean, obviously it's still theft, but I mean, at the end of the day, he didn't hurt
Yeah.
anybody. So, with Helltown, before we let you get back to what you got to do, man, what is
Hmm.
your exact thoughts as to what is going on there, do you think, man? I mean, do you think,
Well, I mean that to me, that area of the country, up there in Northeast Ohio, it's it's I guess some people would call the descriptive word creepy. I don't necessarily call it creepy because I feel like it's home. Uh, but there's something to it. There's some sort of an older ancient energy in some parts of the woods up there and the river valleys and stuff, especially the Great Lakes. And maybe that area is on one of these ley lines, one of these centers of, more magnetic energy with the earth. Maybe there's some underground caverns there, or some, I do love the idea of portals. I don't know if they could scientifically actually, exist in the world, but, maybe there's some portal, just something that the wanted to keep people away from. That's a very real possibility. I mean, the fact that they sent in soldiers with M16s, this is Vietnam era, so M16s, and kind of almost march the people out at gunpoint. Um, that's odd for the 20th century America, and that makes me suspect that there was something a little more to it than just, hey, let's make a national park because we care about nature. Um, Now, interesting little piece of trivia. I forget his name, but the man who was sent there to organize the park and responsible for clearing out Boston Township, um, on the day where he kind of, was done with his job, was clearing out his office to head on to his next assignment, he had a heart attack. So,
hmm,
kind of like sealed with his blood sort of thing. Um, I thought that was interesting, coincidental, and somewhat poetic because, sure, he was just doing his job, but in my opinion, what he was doing was pretty cruel and terrible to uproot people who had, maybe lived in that area, or their family had lived in that area for, 200 years or close to by that point. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of overreach. And I think, if nothing else, there's nothing supernatural going on there. It's still terrifying because it shows you just how much can push you around when it wants to, for whatever reason. So
that was some straight up gnarly stuff right there for sure. And it's pretty disturbing. And at the end of the day, someone's got to stand up for right. So, I mean, if someone's telling
yeah,
me to do something nefarious like that, yeah, no, I'm all set. But it makes me think too, when it comes to national parks, do you feel that again, this is a conspiracy theory. I'm not really too into those, but do you feel like they're created to save wildlife and respect areas and water and such? Or do you think they have been created to allow the supposed cryptids such as Dogman and Bigfoot and these feral people to basically have areas where they don't encroach on people too much?
I think that, maybe not all of them, but I think certainly some of them, and it's probably the bigger, more well-known parks, especially the ones, that take up a lot of land and stuff. I think that, yeah, whether it's cryptids or something else, they exist to. I mean, shoot, the Grand Canyon. huge chunks. I think 90% of the Grand Canyon is off the limits. It's not just like, yeah, there's no trail there, but you can get there if you want to. It is straight up off limits, and you will be in some serious trouble if you go into the prohibited areas. So stuff like that. Yeah, I think a lot of these parks probably exist to keep people out of areas and away from things, whether they're living things or archaeology related things, or like I said, energy related things. I do think there's something to that.
No, that's a great answer right there, and it does make you wonder for sure. And it even makes you wonder more when they were allowing people to go into national parks, basically with like no way to defend yourself at points in time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, up until like, I don't know, 10 years ago, carrying a gun in a national park was a felony. Now it's not, as long as the national park exists in a state in which you can legally carry a gun.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. What's up with that? Is it like ringing the dinner bell for something? I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't really seem logical to allow citizens that in theory are supposed to care about to just go into an area completely, I don't know, unknowledgeable. I mean, if you are going swimming in the water in California, well, there's lifeguards all telling you, hey man, there was a huge great white out there earlier,
Right.
and there's signs everywhere saying that, okay? But in these areas, they don't even say that stuff, dude.
Well, it's not just the monsters. I mean, there's things like bears and mountain lions and wild dogs, that aren't even that fantastic, but they're dangerous, and way more dangerous than any of those things. People out in the wilderness when there's no one else around. Sometimes,
Hmm.
real bad people take advantage of that. Someone who just wants to for the sake of, and the best chance of not getting caught is to do it far away from other people. You're out there isolated in your tent enjoying nature, and then some psychopath comes along. I think that's a much bigger threat than even Dogman, Bigfoot, pale crawlers, or wild animals. Honestly, it's other people. So yeah, letting people go out there, good law-abiding citizens, not carrying guns, telling them they can't, when the bad guys either have guns or have claws and teeth. Yeah, that's pretty stupid. So
All I can think about, man, is I know you like that movie too, is Dog Soldiers, dude. Like at the
yeah,
beginning, when pretty much they're just out there with absolutely nothing because obviously they weren't allowed to
right.
be in that park with a weapon, and the tent just opens up, man. Imagine that actually occurring, whether it was a human being or some sort of cryptid, and not having
Yeah,
anything to defend yourself. I mean, what was that?
yeah,
An envelope opener, or more or less?
yeah, yeah. That is just crazy. And honestly, I've done a lot of camping in tents, but these days I'm not that comfortable with it because I just feel like, a thin layer of nylon fabric between me and the outside world isn't
No, thank
enough
you.
protection when I'm asleep and vulnerable. You know what I mean? So,
Yes, and do you know if like park rangers and stuff or military personnel would they be able to carry weapons in those areas, or would they have to have like a permit? I mean, if a forest
well, I'm sure
ranger,
so there's different types of rangers, well, at least, park personnel. Um, and some of them are like sworn law enforcement,
okay,
agents. So yeah, those guys definitely carry guns. And then others are more like, help you out, find lost hikers,
yes.
trail guide types. And a lot of times they don't.
Damn, so
So
they're even sending those guys and women out there
yeah.
unarmed too, man. What the frig? That's just crazy to think about that because I mean, before I let you go, that's like Timothy Treadwell. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that dude, like he got some
That was
really,
crazy.
yeah, he had some great information, but at the end of the day, man, this dude was literally going into prime predator area with nothing to defend himself. Not bear
Yep.
spray, not an electric fence, not an air horn, literally nothing. Okay. And well, look what happened to him. I mean, him and his wife get torn apart and they're trying to fight off this massive grizzly bear with a frying pan because that's all they
Right.
have in their friggin' campsite. And like you said, we've talked about this before, where bears get loaded up on, and I don't care who you are, unless you're He-Man, you're not taking on a grizzly bear with a frying
Well, I
pan.
mean, even so, I'm 6'4", barefoot. I work out. I'm 250 plus pounds usually, and I do martial arts. So when I go against someone a lot smaller than me, it is so easy to just, without using hardly any technique, pick them up and throw them around, and that's, me 250 pounds against someone who's maybe 180 pounds. Now imagine, it's you 200 pounds against a bear that's 800 pounds. You know, you just got to do that math and realize that there is nothing you can physically do against that bear without modern technology. You know, yeah, you're literally just like a little small child compared to an adult, you know, when you're in that situation. So
100%. And to anyone out there that's never seen that movie, Edge of Darkness, you should check that out. And that movie with Anthony Hopkins, you should check out that movie there where they crash in Alaska and they end
oh
up,
yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yes, and that huge bear is tracking them. Okay.
Yep.
Just anyone watch that because at the end of the day, that's what would happen to any person with a grizzly bear. I mean, like you said, even yourself, man, you're a big person, but if that thing grabbed onto you,
So
man, you'd be flailing around like that too. And I'm like only 6'1", like 158, so that could pretty much just destroy me.
well, and yeah, and the thing is, like for instance, chimpanzees, they're terrifying, and they're usually smaller than a grown human, right? But like lighter weight and smaller in stature, but they've got that freakish chimp ape animal strength where they can literally rip your face off or your fingers off or other things off and just wreck you. Imagine something that's got that same animal strength and ferocity, but it's, you know, 4 or 5 times your body mass. Oh man, you know, that's why humans developed spears and bows and arrows and firearms, because otherwise, you know, we just didn't stand a chance. So
It's so crazy you say that because when I sit here at night and I just get ready to go to bed and I just watch cool stuff about like prehistoric man and woman and just really realizing, like you were saying, they didn't even have tents, man. They were
yep,
just, I mean, sure, if they were lucky, they were in caves, but imagine living back
fire, man.
then.
That's all they had to protect themselves. They'd make a
Yes.
big old fire to scare away the animals. Yeah,
Yes, and I've actually recently seen something as well saying that it might not actually be that all animals are afraid of fire. Fire actually might draw in animals as well, though, which is something that's interesting. I mean, obviously, if you light them on fire, but I know that's really how like wolves got entwined with people. They saw the fires and
probably.
stuff
Yeah.
and came close to it because they realized, hey, there's a food source.
Yeah, and that was lucky too. You know, it's like humans are like, oh wait, this wolf, he's actually pretty cool. If we feed him, maybe he'll like protect us and help us out, right? You know, and so you know we started raising wolves and dogs as part of our system of hunting and protection and all that. Yeah, what a lucky break, you know, to have an
Right?
animal that stays up all night for you, watches the
Yes.
cat for you. You know,
And that's what that happens in India, which is extremely bizarre, man. They have baboons and other primates that steal puppies and wolves and stuff and basically raise
hmm
them, man. So as they become older and can't defend themselves, and like you said, have problems getting food, well, they have like a dog that thinks it's part of their family. And on a final note, man, before I let you go here, and we should definitely talk about this more next time because I think this might resonate with you. So the Gugway, in my opinion, is the baboon version of the Dogman. It literally looks just like it. And
sure,
when people talk about the face eater, that's one of the terms for it. Well, baboons are
yeah,
huge on eating faces and
chimps and baboons. You're right.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay. So there's your term face eater right there. And to anyone that wants to see something disturbing, you can Google it and you'll see it. But unfortunately was watching a National Geographic's video where a male baboon literally grabbed a brand new baby baboon from this female baboon and started eating its face. Okay. And
hmm
a lot of the nutrients are in the eyes and the brain and stuff. So not just
yeah,
them eat that, but the term face eater with Gugwe and Dogman Baboon, I think there's something going there. So
yeah. I mean, they very well could be. So that'll be an interesting topic to cover for sure. That
sweet.
yeah, I look forward to it.
Heck yeah, man. Well, thanks again for stopping in tonight and hanging out with us, brother, and bringing that good information like you always do, because it's a pleasure to hang out with you, a pleasure to call you my friend, and a pleasure to have you as a teammate, man. So thanks again.
Yeah, well, I enjoy it too every time. So
I do truly appreciate everyone. If you have made it this far in the video, you really are a legend. If you do enjoy my content, please like, comment, subscribe, and feed the algorithm. And remember, there are things that go bump in the night that are way worse than anything I could ever tell you.